We are not going to forget them.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown in over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City and points west. This is the scene every night in Brazil's major cities. People banging pots to show their anger at President Bolsonaro. He's in complete denial about the coronavirus, calling it the little flu. 26 aides of Bolsonaro have caught it. He denies having it and goes out into crowds and shakes hands. More importantly, while Brazilian mayors and governors have told people to stay home, Bolsonaro wants all but the very old to get back to work. A million Brazilians have signed a petition calling on him to be impeached and thrown out of office. Now we go to this year's Gandhi Peace Award. As many of you know, I work for the Middle East Crisis Committee. I also work for Promoting Enduring Peace, which has given out the Gandhi Peace Award since 1960. Now for the announcement of the Gandhi Peace Award for 2020. It comes with a medal made of peace bronze, that is, metal made from retired nuclear weapons. Along with it is a $5,000 prize that will be shared equally by the two winners. The Gandhi Peace Award has been given out since 1960 by promoting enduring peace to laureates such as Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez, Lucius Walker Jr., Tom Goldtooth, Omar Barghouti, Ralph Nader, and Jackson Brown. Take a moment sometime to go to our website, pepeace.org, and click on the tab on top, Gandhi Peace Award, to see the list of all the rather amazing winners. The board thought long and hard about this one. In the end, we decided our best contribution would be giving the prize in hopes that it would reorient the peace movement and the left on an issue we think most progressives have gone astray. It's said that most generals prepare for their last war. Most of the peace movement has done the same with Syria, making simple-minded comparisons with the U.S. genocide and invasion against the Iraqis. Most have ignored the agency of Syrians and their efforts of a democratic uprising, one that has been met with incredible violence and in part influenced badly by foreign forces. But it still remains alive, whether it's hidden in Deraa in Idlib or active among refugees around the world. We decided to give the award to two Syrians involved in organizations doing humanitarian work. The first is to Dr. Zahar Salul. He's past president of the Syrian American Medical Society, which has built and rebuilt hospitals in Syria in recent years underground and in caves. He's now president of Med Global, which helps out not just in Syria, but in Palestine and in 14 countries. He's a pulmonary specialist in Chicago, so as you can imagine, he's hard at work on helping patients with the coronavirus. The second honoree will be Maysoon Al-Masri. She is from Deraa, where the mass demonstrations began in 2011. She is a leader of the Syrian Civil Defense, better known in the West as the White Helmets. They are the heroes who dig out the survivors and the bodies from the rubble of Assad or Russian bombs. They have enraged the regimes because they video and photograph the results of the barrel bombs and the chemical weapons. Now, during the ceasefire in the remnant of Idlib, they work disinfecting, hoping to ward off the plague. So our award this year is to the medical workers and the rescue workers of Syria. I mentioned that one reason for giving the award to two Syrians is to counteract the virus of simple-minded anti-imperialism that infects some sections of the left. Here are two examples of loathsome apologists for Assad who are treated seriously by some progressives. The first is Vanessa Beeley, who recently claimed the white helmets are using coronavirus treatment as part of some plan by the U.S. to take over Syria. The second is Eva K. Bartlett, who goes past a Syrian hospital in conquered Maharat Numan, bombed by Assad or Russia, and makes a joke about it. This is an encouraging article by George Monbiot in The Guardian. He writes, while it may not be true that there are no atheists in foxholes, there are no neoliberals in a pandemic. What he is noticing is that all the governments that worshipped the market and were busy dismantling government services and cutting taxes are doing a complete turnaround and are spending billions or trillions trying to keep things going. The U.S. Congress is trying to figure out a federal jobs program. Amazing. The main thrust of the article is about self-help, how people all over the world are helping each other. We'll link to it at thestruggle.org. Now back to February on the Yale campus, a vigil in protest of the terrible toll of murders of Native American women and government indifference.
Hi, everyone. Bonjour, Amin, Megan Gupta, and Indigenous Cause, Ninda Bendagos, Balatig and Anishinaabe, Mikanak and Dodom, Ann Arbor and Donjaba. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Gupta. I'm Ojibwe from the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. I'm Turtle Clan, and I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So on behalf of the Indigenous community here at Yale, I want to welcome the Indigenous community and our non-Indigenous allies to this vigil. I ask that you refrain from shouting to preserve the honor of this topic, and if you want to show support for what someone is saying, I just ask that you snap instead. So before I start, I want to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the traditional and unceded lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Skagit-Koke, Golden Hill Pagusset, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac and other Algonquin-speaking peoples. I also want to acknowledge the enslaved peoples who built Yale and whose contributions go largely unacknowledged. Land acknowledgements are not enough. They place recognition over action. But now, more than ever before, is the time to take action against the settler colonial project that is the United States of America, Canada, and other settler nations. Missing and murdered Indigenous women is both a crisis and a movement. Indigenous women and girls from around the country are disappearing, are being murdered, and are rendered silent and invisible by state and federal governments. Throughout history, Indigenous women have been hypersexualized, fetishized, and exoticized by colonial powers. Since the beginning of the colonial project in North America, the rise of heteropatriarchy created a system of violence and oppression for Indigenous women. For example, one of the first Indigenous women that many youth hear about growing up is Pocahontas, a Native woman who was sex trafficked and forced to convert to Christianity. Today, this violence has continued and escalated. On many reservations, 96% of Native women experience sexual violence, which is 10 times more than the national average. In 2016, the number of known incidents of missing and murdered Indigenous women stood at almost 6,000, and this number has only grown. The majority of these crimes are committed by non-Native people, not our community members. Over time, the settler government has systematically attacked tribal jurisdiction over sexual crimes. Native nations have little jurisdiction over sexual crimes that non-Native people commit, even if it is on their own sovereign territory. This creates a situation in which white men are not held accountable for their violent actions against Native women. The federal government is tasked with investigating these crimes, however, they failed in that regard too. The government declines to prosecute 70% of these cases. This gender violence permeates as the result of a legacy of disenfranchising tribal laws and policies, indoctrination, and assimilation. The task of bringing the perpetrator to justice is daunting because of the tangled legal web of jurisdiction and the federal government's unwillingness to seek justice, which comes as no surprise considering the foundations of this country. It's essential that we understand missing and murdered Indigenous women as not a singular crisis, but as part of the broader settler colonial project that seeks to undermine Indigenous sovereignty, erase Indigenous cultures and histories, and rewrite American history as one of bravery and equality instead of one of enslavement, genocide, and capitalism. While thousands of women and girls feel pain, go missing, and die, the U.S. government watches and does absolutely nothing. Violence against Native women only serves the colonial settler nation that wishes to see the end of indigeneity in its borders. MMIW is just another way that we are rendered invisible, that we are blamed, that we are sexualized. We cannot understand the histories of the United States, environmental racism, capitalism, and trafficking without Indigenous oppression, and we cannot do so now. I also want to note that trans and Black Indigenous women face these violences at the highest rate of all. And it's important to recognize the settler abuses on sexuality and gender expression that still continue today. The families of these women and girls are often tasked with doing the work to search for them. I want us to think about how screwed up that is, that the family and community members who should have the space to take time and process and grieve are forced to do this work alone. These women and girls held important roles in their community. They made decisions, they held spots in tribal council, they worked to revitalize our languages, and they carried knowledge and community memory. And aside from all of that, they were human beings who were treated with horrific levels of racism and violence. I now want to take a moment of silence to honor these women, their families, and their communities. We are not going to forget them. When I think about the MMIW crisis, I'm often filled with sadness and despair. But I'm not hopeless. Indigenous women are not broken. We have created a movement that spans across borders, across communities, across governments. We have marched time and time again. We demand a national database of missing women, the return of jurisdiction back to Native governments, support for our communities, social media organizing, and broader political and social awareness of this fight. Ultimately, I'm now going to introduce Jamuna Galay Tamang. She is a visiting research fellow from British Columbia and would like to say a few words about what's happening in Wet'suwet'en territory right now.
Thank you for that. Thank you for having me here. My name's Jamuna Galay Tamang. I was born on Tsleil-Waututh territory, North Vancouver, British Columbia. My mother comes from Nepal, from the Tamang clan, and my father is Dene Métis from northern Saskatchewan and Ukrainian from Manitoba. And I feel a responsibility to say something right now because my fiance is from the Wet'suwet'en Nation. He's from the Beaver clan, and his uncle, my uncle, is the highest ranked chief, hereditary chief for the Beaver clan. And there are 5 clans under the Wet'suwet'en Nation, and they're all unanimously opposed to the building construction of this natural gas pipeline that's going through their territory. And right now, at this very moment, you've probably heard in the news, but the RCMP and the government are breaching the blockade that's there, that's protecting the land. They're invading the territory. The thing about the territories in British Columbia is that they were never surrendered. There was never any treaties that were drawn up. And so at this time, that land, the jurisdiction of that land, is under the responsibility of the hereditary chiefs. And so they're open to negotiations and consultations, and the only thing that we ask is for consent before any of these things happen. One of the things that in part of the discussions, there was an alternate route that was suggested very close by that wouldn't go through some sacred sites, but that was denied. And so at this time, there is no consent. There's been just very, very vocal no consent onto the territory. And so the reason I feel like this is so important to bring up tonight is because these pipelines are a danger to the communities that live nearby this, particularly the fact that man camps are needed to build these. So there's a 450-person man camp that is planned to go up near this pipeline, and those put the women in that community at risk. And the rate of sexual violence goes very high once those camps are up. And so, and the other thing being is that we are literally seeing the government, what's the word? I don't know what the word is, but they're okay with the fact that they're breaking the law, their own traditional law, the Wet'suwet'en law, but also recent laws that have been, this is what I wanted to say. Because right before coming out here, I asked my fiance, I'm like, what do you want me to say? Because like, I'm not from that nation. And so he's like, okay, this is, just let them know that this is literally going against a Supreme Court ruling that passed in '97, where they gave the Supreme Court, so our federal court, gave the Wet'suwet'en people jurisdiction, as well as the Gitxsan people. There's a case called the Delgamuukw case, and they won rights and title, Aboriginal rights and title to land. And so right now, the government doesn't care about their own ruling. They don't care about the traditional laws. They don't care about any of that, and they're saying that they're just going to go ahead with this planned pipeline. And so there's so much that's wrong about this, and I just wanted to bring that awareness over here. I know that a lot of people know about it already, but I just feel like I needed to say those few things. And so if we're taught that consent doesn't matter, then when women are in these situations and they're not giving consent, what's being taught is that consent doesn't matter. And so we're literally putting women at risk by what's going on the land. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much.
So now we're going to hear a song from Red Territory, our drum group.
We are Red Territory, an Indigenous performing arts group on campus. Today we're going to be singing a song called Abish Taloa, Golisa Pokne Awa Tuklo. This is a Choctaw hymn, so it has Christian overtones with it. And I think in this moment I just want to recognize also the part that religion and missions have played in exacerbating sexual assault against Indigenous women. But this is a song that was sung on the Trail of Tears. When my people were removed from our traditional homelands into Oklahoma. This is a song that it's a really sad song, and it has a lot of feeling into it, but it's about coming from like a darker place and going to somewhere better. So we're going to sing that.
Oki, Jiho, Wapu, Rakakocha, Anu, Aglo, Fogma, Abba, Yakni, Ila, Hokna, Ona, Lahi, Oki.
Yakuki.
This vigil is one of many other events held throughout Canada and the U.S. today to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Earlier today, people gathered in the streets of Vancouver to address the relationship between MMIW and resource extraction in light of the events in Unistoten Territory. We stand in solidarity with Wet'suwet'en as they halt the construction of the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Pipeline construction calls for a 450-person man camp. Man camps are temporary housing facilities that are set up to house workers for industrial projects, like the Coastal GasLink project. Sexual violence rates increase considerably with the presence of man camps. With that in mind, I want to begin by saying that a lot can be said about the disappearance and murder of Indigenous women. But in order to understand the scale of this so-called epidemic, one must acknowledge that this is not actually an epidemic. Kidnapping and murdering Native women has always been part of the American tradition. The ongoing existence of states like the U.S. is contingent upon the death of Indigenous people. The United States of America can never not be a white supremacist, anti-black, heteropatriarchal, transphobic, and ableist state. The ongoing settlement and colonization of this continent demands the displacement of Indigenous people. It demands the extermination of Native people today just as much as it did the first day Europeans decided to seize this land under the doctrine of discovery. That history, in addition to the legacies of chattel slavery, is as much our present as it is our past. Everything we know about American culture derives from the ongoing subjugation of Black and Native people. Settler colonialism, as a structure and not an event, seeks to dominate Native lands through the imposition of colonial conceptions of gender, sexuality, ability, and class. The subsequent hierarchization of such social categories situates Native women, among other kinds of people, non-white people, at the bottom. Within this larger schema of patriarchal white supremacy, Native women have been forced to reckon with the violence of settler colonialism. The business of killing Indians, and if you're not Native, don't say Indians, therefore entails sexual violence, bioessentialism, and the destruction of matrilocal knowledge systems just as much as it entails reproducing the nation state. The U.S. resides within an overarching system of colonialism and imperialism, and yet people, white liberals, think that this can all begin to be solved with policymaking, law reform, augmented police forces, harsher sentences, or through electing Native people to office or lobbying Washington. People think Native people can begin to solve this problem once they infiltrate spheres such as this one, and once they begin to inflict change from the inside. None of this will work. It will only serve to legitimate the ideologies of colonialism.
I'm sad to report the death of Manolis Glazos, a Greek resistance hero who remained active up until his 90s. He was most famous for scaling the steep walls of the Acropolis along with a friend and tearing down the German Nazi flag and replacing it with a Greek flag. In recent years, he was part of the Syriza organization when it was a left-wing party, but he resigned in disgust in 2016 after its capitulation to EU austerity. He once said this about World War II resistance: Before every battle, every protest, we told each other, if you live, don't forget me. I am paying a debt to those I lost during those difficult years. My only regret is that I haven't done more. Finally, to end in a happier mood, some photos from the New York Botanical Garden in 2018. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. Stay safe, friends. This is Stanley Heller for The Struggle.